Hi, this is Kevin. Welcome to the tutorial for exercise 2 of the coding assignment for Zelle 3E Chapter 6. And I'm recording this in spring of 2022. And so the second thing that we're going to work on is this program that is now called reusable parts. So let's take a look at this. Okay, so this illustrates the use case that I call reusable parts. Okay, you'll remember the slide from my lecture. I picked out four, I think, four of the four of the most prominent reasons to factor code out into subfunctions. And I called them bags of code. We've already done that. Reusable parts is the second. So that's where we are now. And reusable parts is we don't want duplicate code, and we want to follow the principle that modern day writers call DRI, D-R-I, don't repeat yourself. Okay? So what are we going to do with this? Well, we are going to refactor it, and even though we wouldn't do this if we were on the job, as part of our assignment, we're going to take reusable parts and we're going to refactor, rename it, and we're just going to add the suffix underscore. Oh, no, we're not. Hit escape. Let's try it again. That didn't work. Reusable parts, right click, refactor, rename. Okay, now I've got a click there, and then I'm going to put the suffix refactored. And this is just going to be our convention within our class. Okay. And in the real world, if you refactor a program, it's just the next version of that program. You put it under version control. You commit the change. You don't change the name of the program. Okay. We're just doing it so we can keep straight what we've done in our class. Okay, click on refactor. Now, you'll notice that I had the editor open and actually changed the name on the editor. A PyCharm is a really good tool this way. And let's close this. Okay, so as you'll remember from the lecture, this is the song Blowing in the Wind. This is the lyrics for the song Blowing in the Wind by Bob Dylan. And I picked it. I said that I had two problems. One is that I've got too much code in the main, and you could argue that either way, right? You could say, Kevin, that's just a little bit bigger than a page. That's not too big to me. But I could have picked a longer song. Okay, so just accept the fact that we want to do the refactoring to get rid of the length in main as well. Plus, we've got a refrain that's happening in each of the verses. So songs don't have stanzas, they have verses. And this part that repeats at the end of a verse is also called the refrain. And we've got this happening in all three verses. So we're going to want to factor that out into its own function. Okay? And again, it's probably a little more challenging to find this in programs that do more conventional things than print poems or song lyrics. But this is a way to do it where you're not confused by the other coding issues. Okay, so again, we're going to use the built-in features on uh, PyCharm to do this. Now, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to do this one a little bit different than I typically do it. Okay, I'm gonna factor out the refrain, the three refrains first, even before I factor out the other code. So the first time the refrain happens is here on lines 18 and 19. So I'm just going to highlight that, right click, refactor, extract method. And I would say, I'm going to call this write refrain. Okay. And again, since it's only printing text, we don't have to pass any parameters in, and we're not getting any return values back. So it's just the name that we have to fill out, and OK. And this is nice. It says here that it has detected two code fragments in the file that can be replaced with a call to this extracted method. Would I like to review and replace them? Yes, I would. So I wanted to show you this feature. So you click on yes, and it shows you the first one. And we're going to click replace. And it shows you the second one, and we're going to click replace. And now it has factored all three of those out, right? Refrain in all three places. Now, I'm going to tell you that I did this the other way a couple of days ago, and it didn't happen that way. So when I had already divided up this stuff into subfunctions for verse 1, verse 2, verse 3, and then I tried to refactor the refrain, it didn't find the other parts. And I don't know if I just didn't highlight things right or what, but this is really powerful. Okay, so I like that. Okay, so I should have tested this before I started. Okay. Again, you want to be able to establish to your satisfaction that the code works before you start a refactoring, and then it works the same way after. Okay, now we had already tested this in the lecture, so I'm going to excuse myself for that, but we should really have run a test. Okay, so I'm going to right click, say run reusable parts refactoring, and let's see. Well, yeah, it looks like we get the refrain at the end of verse 1 and verse 2 and verse 3, and we have all the other parts. That is a successful refactoring. Okay, now what I want to do is I want to factor out the title and credits, and then each of the verses. When I factor out a verse, I'm going to factor out, it's going to include the call to write a refrain, because that's part of that work, right? Okay. And then this is the first that we see that when we do programming like this, when we design our programs like this, not only are we going to have the main calling subfunctions, but depending upon how much work they do, the subfunctions are going to call further subfunctions, okay? And we're going to wind up with a structure that looks like a hierarchy chart, all right? And this is just a very simple version of that, all right? Okay, so let's factor out the title and credits. So highlight it, refactor, extract method. Again, since it's only printing stuff, including the call. Oh, we don't have a call in this. So we're going to call this write title and credits. And again, this is kind of two things, but not. Probably in the poem publishing business, they may call this the header or the masthead or something like this. They probably have a name for these things collectively. So that I think this is just one one thing. Okay, so right title and credits, that's gone immediately after. And I put it before right refrain, but that's okay because we're really going to be calling right refrain from the verses. So we want it to be, we kind of want it in hierarchy order. And by hierarchy order, I mean if you look at a hierarchy chart that describes the code, you want to go from top to bottom, left to right. Okay? That's the order that they would appear in here. And I'm just going to remind you again, in terms of the mechanics of Python, it doesn't really care what order the functions are in. Good coding practice says we put them in this hierarchical order. The only thing that the Python machinery really cares about is that we put the call to main last. Okay, so all of the functions are properly declared before we start the action. All right, so let's do another one. Did we do a test? I don't think we did a test. So let's look at the test. Yeah, how many roads must a man walk down? I'm not going to sing. I'm tempted to sing, and with my Bob Dylan voice, and you're not going to want to hear that. Many of you probably don't like Bob Dylan's own voice, so you definitely are not going to like my imitation of Bob Dylan. Okay, that was a successful refactoring. Okay, let's do, so we have a call to write title and credits. Let's highlight everything that should go into verse 1, including the call to write refrain. Right click, refactor, extract method, and we're going to call this write verse 1. Okay, so we've got that up there. And right verse 1, it put it right after right after the main, but we do call right title and credits before that. So I'm going to move right title and credits before it. So it kind of goes in hierarchical order then. Okay, so now I'm going to put that up here. And here we go. So right title and credits, right verse 1, and then right verse 1 calls right refrain. Okay, so they're in hierarchical order. Okay, you have to remember to test because every time you do a refactoring, you want to prove to yourself that you still passed your tests. Now, professional programmers do a lot of automated testing. It's a little hard to do automated testing on things that just print things. There are ways to do it. But here, because we're only doing a testing by inspection, well, we have to run it and look at it every time. So I've done verse 1. I'm going to put you in pause while I do verses 2 and 3, and then we'll come back and we'll look at the finished product together. So here's the pause. Okay, we're back, and I'm bringing you back a little early because I just made a mistake that you're probably likely to do. Well, it might happen to you, and I want you to see how to recover from it. So I did the refactoring for verse 2, and I don't have that in the right order yet for a polite, well-structured program. But it did work well mechanically. And now I want to do verse 3. And here's what I did. I didn't highlight the call to the refrain. Okay, so I did this. I said that I wanted to refactor extract method, and then I called this write verse. Oh, we need an underscore there. Write verse 3. and then I clicked OK, but I've got write refrain here at the end. That's not where I want it to go. Okay. What happens if I just refactored and I got the refactoring wrong, the grouping wrong? Well, you can just undo it. I mean, you could do it with and go up to the menu, edit, undo, okay, or you could use your hotkeys. I'm on the Mac, so I would use Command Z. If you were on Windows, you would use a Control Z. So I'm just going to use a Command Z. And I'm going to do that. I had to push it twice, and I got back to where I was. Okay, so these refactorings that you do with the automated tools, they are part of the chain of changes that you can undo. So now I'm going to do it the right way. I'm going to highlight it to here. I don't know why it wants to take part of that other line. Let's highlight it in the other direction. And I'm going to pick refactor extract method. I'm going to call it write verse 3 and choose OK. And now this is it. Yeah, write title and credits, write verse 1, write verse 2, write verse 3. And now I just have them in the wrong order, right? So I'm going to take write verse 2, and I'm going to use my hotkeys to cut that and put it after verse 1. Now, I would typically just put the write refrain right after verse 1 because that's the first time it's called. Some people might put it after all the verses. Neither one's right or wrong. Okay, so I'm just going to have write refrain between 1 and 2. And then I'm going to go back and find write verse 3. And I'm going to cut it, and I'm going to paste it down here. Okay, that looks good. All right, and let's run a test because that's always how you prove that you've refactored. Again, we're not changing the function, and that looks good. Okay, and am I done? Well, no, my doc string is still says the old thing. So let's have the doc string say print the lyrics to the Bob Dylan song Blowin' in the Wind. Okay, and again, period. Okay, and then I'm just going to put that all on the first line because it fits, and then we're not using up a lot of lines for the doc string. Okay. Now, as long as we're talking about doc strings, okay, in addition to using doc strings to document what a program does, right, up at this module level. There are people who use doc strings to document what functions do, okay? And we're going to do that in our class, but we're going to wait till we're calling a function from outside the module. So right now, the only calls that are happening here are from the main or from one of the other functions that are in the module that we're in. And if you write a doc string for every one of your functions, it just gets way too busy and way too long. And the convention that we're going to use, which is a best practice, is we're only going to write doc strings from things that are used from the outside. So we write one for the whole program because that gets used from the outside. And if we have a program, if we have a module that can be imported and then functions that can be called, from inside, then we'll write a doc string for them. But we're not going to write doc strings for functions until we get to that point, and that's a couple of chapters down the road. Okay? So I think we have everything changed. It looks pretty. Let's do a final test to make sure that it was a successful refactoring. Yeah, that looks good. And then let's kind of look at the goodness of the code. Do the functions have high cohesion? Yeah, I'm going to say that they're all about one thing. The main is about orchestration. Write title and credits. Yeah, it has a two-thing name, but I'm going to argue that people who print poems think of these as a unit, and they have a name for them, and I don't know it because I'm not a poetry guy. Okay. And then I've got write verse 1. That's cohesive. Write refrain. That's very tight and cohesive. Verse 2, verse 3. Those are all tight. What about this thing that I talk about low coupling? Okay. Well, the kinds of code that we're doing now, all we're doing is we're calling the function. Okay, we're not passing parameters. We're not expecting a return value. Okay, so all the functions that we have a very simple interface or API. It's just you call the function with the name and you don't put any parameters in, and we don't expect any return value. So the calling code definitely does not know too much about the called code. Okay, it only knows its very simple interface. So very low coupling and very high cohesiveness. So that's your last step. Have all your refactorings gone successfully? Do you still pass your tests? And do you meet these kind of goodness measures for all your functions of high cohesion, low coupling? And this is yes in all the cases. So that's it for this one. I'm going to leave you here, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.